I didn't stop her when she walked out. Not because I didn't care, but because I realized that fighting for someone who doesn't want to fight with you is not love. It's desperation. She picked up her bag and walked out the door without a second glance, and I just sat there, still. I didn't chase her. I didn't beg her to stay. I chose silence instead, because sometimes love isn't about pleading for someone to stay. It's about knowing when to let go. I could still hear the echo of her footsteps fading down the hallway. The sound was deafening. The apartment suddenly felt so much emptier, quieter. Her absence settled in like a heavy weight that I couldn't seem to shake off. Everything about this place reminded me of her. Her favorite mug still on the kitchen counter, her books scattered across the coffee table. I could feel the longing for her, but I chose not to reach out. I could have sent a text, called, or maybe just checked her social media to see if she was okay. But I didn't. I told myself that fighting for someone who's already made up their mind wouldn't bring her back. It would only drag us further apart. So I stayed silent, giving myself the space I needed to breathe, to heal. I chose to respect her decision, even if it tore me apart inside. The first few weeks after she left were a blur. I barely slept. I barely ate. I went through the motions of everyday life, but nothing felt real. The apartment was cold, as if it, too, had been abandoned. The silence was loud, louder than any argument we ever had, but I still didn't reach out. I knew deep down that if I kept clinging to her, I'd lose myself. I had already given so much of myself to this relationship, and in doing so, I had lost sight of who I was. I had to find myself again, so I focused on getting better, getting stronger, and becoming whole on my own. I started running again. I picked up my old hobbies, reading, writing. I reconnected with old friends. Slowly, I started to feel alive again, but even with all the progress, there were days when the pain of her leaving would overwhelm me. Nights when I'd wake up expecting to hear her voice, but the silence would greet me instead. I missed her. But the silence, I realized, was healing me. Then, one day, I saw her name on my phone screen. "Can we talk?" I froze. For a moment, I didn't know what to feel. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to leave the past where it was. Another part of me, the part that still loved her, wanted to hear her out. But I had learned a painful lesson in the months since she left. If you fight too hard for something that was never meant to be, you risk losing yourself in the process. So I chose not to jump at the opportunity. I chose to respond carefully. If you want closure, we can talk. But if you're not sure, then don't come unless you're certain. I hit send, my finger lingering over the screen. I didn't want to leave things unfinished, but I also wasn't ready to go back to a place of hurt. I had worked too hard to heal, and I wasn't about to undo all that progress. She replied a few days later, "I'm sure. I need to see you." And just like that, she was back in my life. When she knocked on the door, I opened it slowly, unsure of what to expect. She stood there looking the same, but with a look in her eyes that I didn't recognize. There was sadness, yes, but there was also something else. Something heavier, like regret, guilt, or realization. I didn't say anything at first. We just stood there, staring at each other, both unsure of what to do next. The silence between us was different now. It wasn't cold or distant, it was filled with understanding. Understanding that we had both changed, that we couldn't go back to what we once were. Finally, she spoke. "I made a mistake," she said, her voice shaky. "I thought I needed more. I thought I could find happiness somewhere else. But I was wrong. I was so wrong. It was always you. You were the one I needed, and I didn't realize it until now." I didn't interrupt her. I let her speak, but inside I was struggling. Part of me wanted to forgive her, to hold her, to tell her it was okay. But another part of me, an even stronger part, knew that the past couldn't be undone. I wasn't the same man who had loved her with blind devotion. I had learned to love myself, and I wasn't about to throw that away. "I stayed silent when you left," I said, my voice calm but firm. "Not because I didn't care, but because I needed to hear myself again. And I did. I found myself again. And I'm not the person you left behind. I've changed." She looked at me, her eyes filled with unshed tears. "I know," she whispered. "I can see that. And I'm so sorry. I should have never left. I was wrong." I paused. I know you're sorry, and I believe you, but I can't go back. Not to what we were. We both had our chance, and we let it slip away." There was a long pause, and she nodded slowly, like she had expected me to say those words. She took a deep breath and wiped her eyes. "I understand," she said, her voice steady now. "I just wanted you to know that I regret it. I regret leaving, and I regret not fighting for us." I smiled softly, but it wasn't a smile of victory. It was a smile of peace. "I know you regret it, but I've already moved on. I've found peace. And I think it's time for both of us to do that, separately." With that, she left. But this time, I didn't feel broken. I felt whole. And I realized that sometimes the hardest thing to do isn't fighting for someone. It's letting them go. If you've ever had to let go, even when it hurt more than anything, know this. Letting go doesn't mean giving up. It means choosing yourself, even when you don't think you can. And sometimes that's the hardest, most beautiful thing you can do.